Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. I'm a life and marriage coach for moms, wife, mom of 3, and I'm also an Aries, and for my fellow human design nerds, a sacral manifesting generator. This podcast is for women who want to be happier in their marriage as they navigate their journey through motherhood, even if you're like me and you weren't shown how while growing up. Inside, we're going to be talking about breaking generational cycles when it comes to how to handle conflict in healthy ways, redefining motherhood your way, and prioritizing your well-being, because here, we believe that women don't have to sacrifice their happiness to be a great mom. And a quick note to mamas listening with kids around, you may want to pop your earbuds in because nothing is left unsaid on this show, which means there may be times where something I say isn't meant for little ears. Are you ready? Let's dive in. I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Alison. Oh my gosh, when I first came across your Instagram profile, seeing that you help moms with mom rage, I was like, yes, I need this woman in my life because she totally gets it. And I need to have her on the podcast. So thank you so much for coming onto the show to share with us your journey of working through mom rage.
You are so welcome, Michelle. I'm honored to be here and so thrilled to be having this conversation with you. Thank you.
Yes, it's so needed because I feel like I hear a lot of women, saying that they wish their husbands or their spouses would be, more calm and chill. I'm like, well, women can do that too, like raising my hand, like I am that person in our family.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I love this so much. All right. So can you share with us where you live, how old your kids are, and what you do?
Yes. So I live just west of Minneapolis in Minnesota. So we live in Minnetonka and we have 2 daughters. One is 8.5, almost 9, which is shocking.
Yeah.
And
almost
our
double
youngest,
digits.
I know. And our youngest is 6.5. And then what I do, I am a mentor for mamas who are coming out of just the fog of early motherhood and really realizing that, I need some help. I need some support.
Yeah. Thank goodness people like you exist, because I often judged myself and shamed myself for being like my mom, like, I'm like, well, I don't know how else to be. It just happens. Like
Yes.
if they would just stop doing those things, or if they would just listen, I wouldn't have to be this way. So, but we'll get more into that later, I'm sure. What led you to become a mama mentor?
Great question. After I hit my rock bottom moment and realized that I really valued being home with my daughters and having the flexibility of working and spending time with them in a way that felt good to me, right? Can look different for all of us. I just realized that I wanted something that I could create that I felt really excited about. And for me, it was supporting mothers, especially in their early years. And when I started, I was a postpartum coach. And so I was really helping mamas coming out of like the very early weeks and months after having their babies. And now my work is a little bit more broad and there is really no time frame, but I started it truly out of a passion, a deep desire, and just seeing the tremendous need, as you know, Michelle, for mothers to feel supported, to be supported, to have the resources that they really need. And it's not just about the pregnancy and about the birth, right? It's just like there's this huge void after mothers transition into motherhood and go through matrescence, which is a term that has been circulating a little bit more. But that's why, out of a deep need and a passion.
Yeah. And so needed, because you're totally right. We get all the support while pregnant, but then as soon as you pop that baby out, the hospital's like, okay, you got to get out now. You're like, well, what do I do with this person now that they're outside of me, now that they need me? Like, how do I deal with this?
Yeah.
So I love that you mentioned matrescence. I have heard of it, but for those who are new to that term, can you let us know what that means?
Yes. So matrescence is very similar to adolescence. So when you think about adolescence, right, you're thinking about every human being goes through the phase of adolescence, and it's a complete change in like your body and your hormones and maybe the way you feel about yourself, the way you think. And the same thing happens for us when we become a mother. We go through matrescence, and there isn't a specific time frame, but it truly impacts every single aspect of our lives, physically, emotionally, mentally, culturally, financially. I mean, there isn't a part of matrescence that doesn't impact us, right? So it was first coined by Dana Raphael in the 70s, I believed, and then it was kind of brought back, kind of uncovered or brought to light by Dr. Orly Athen. And I can't remember specifically when that was. And Dana Raphael actually coined the term doula too. So a super influential woman. And I more recently have been learning about matrescence and its role and the importance of talking about it and acknowledging that it's actually a thing, right? It's kind of like something is happening here. I don't really understand what it is, but I feel completely different, right?
Yes.
That's matrescence. It's, yes, you're going through something and it's a really, really big deal. But because our culture isn't familiar with that term and isn't like honoring that passage really, then we can feel like, well, what's wrong with me that I'm feeling this way and other people aren't, right? Like there's just so much, there's so much going on there. But I've been learning about matrescence through the Mama Rising facilitator training that I have done with a teacher through Australia. And so it's been really fun to connect with moms all over the world who are also supporting mothers in this work.
That's amazing. Yeah, I feel like in motherhood, we are constantly rediscovering who we are or feeling like social media, actually, the rise of social media has probably exacerbated our pain and struggle in motherhood, right? Because before motherhood, you only had to compare to the people you surrounded yourself with, right? Like the whole phrase of like keeping up with the Joneses, right? There was no Pinterest, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook. And now you have access to more people seeing what they're showing you and judging yourself for not being that way when really you have no idea if that's even their everyday life. And if it is, you have no idea how they feel about themselves. They might look picture perfect, but inside they could be like dying a little bit or a lot of bit. So I love what you do. And I think all moms at every stage could use support, right? This is not a job that is all sunshine and rainbows, as all moms know, right? Oftentimes it feels like so hard. It's the hardest job ever.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's especially hard when we transition into motherhood with ideas of how we think it will go or how it should go, or our really high expectations of ourselves and our partners and what this is going to look like. And who, like, oh man, I mean, I've talked about this quite a bit on other podcast episodes, that had I known what it would be like for me, especially in those early years of deep pain and suffering, I don't know. But at the same time, I would not be the woman that I am today without being a mother. And so when we can really embrace that matrescence, right, and say, and kind of feel like washed over by the waves and allow it to
evolve us.
That's a great word. Yes.
So it is an evolution.
Yeah.
The whole journey is an evolution if you allow it to be, right? I feel like surrendering has truly been the biggest lesson for me in terms of growing through motherhood, because we are never in the space where like we've done this before, right? It's always a different age, a different season, a different child. Even if you're like, oh, I've had a 7-year-old before, it's like, but this is a whole different person. So every single day is something new that we've never like encountered before. And so we're constantly having to figure things out and be creative or work on ourselves to become more resilient. but I want to hear more about your rock bottom, right? You mentioned you hit your rock bottom. So what was your rock bottom moment? And what was your biggest takeaway that helped you change how you experienced motherhood? Because I keep seeing on Instagram where you're sharing like, I can't believe I'm here now, where you can truly just be present in motherhood rather than filled with rage, rather than feeling like you're ashamed of the type of mom that you're being, and that you can see fear in your children's eyes. Like I've been there before and it doesn't feel good, right? And you just feel kind of like hopeless. You're like, I don't know how to stop myself, but I know I don't want this for them.
Yeah, for sure, Michelle. And thank you so much for saying that, because just even hearing those words for the mamas listening to know that you're not alone, or that nothing is wrong with you if you have experienced that, because so many mamas do. And I think especially over the last 2 or 3 years of this pressure cooker
Oh my goodness,
we've been living in, it's absolutely, it makes so much sense that we would be feeling the way that we do.
Definitely. I mean, I definitely think the pandemic is and has been creating trauma within our bodies.
Yes.
It's a crazy time, but yeah, share with me, what was your rock bottom moment or moments, and what was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I have 2 girls. They're about 2.5 years apart. I had some anxiety with my first after she was born, and I was a stay-at-home mama at that time. And then our second was born. And after she was born, it was November in Minnesota, which is like a really dark, it's actually my least favorite month. Just because it's really dark, you're going into winter, it can get really cold fast. And I was, not only because of that, but my body hormonally, I experienced postpartum depression pretty significantly. And I could tell, like, it just felt like this heavy weight, this veil, and just like total overwhelm. And I did seek out support right away. I went and did acupuncture treatments for a consistent period of time, and the fog really lifted, the veil lifted, and I felt so much better by the spring of that year. Well, then we moved. And so we had a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old, and we moved from Iowa to Minnesota. And I left the community we were connected with, starting over in Minnesota, which is somewhere we had lived before, but for like 10 years, we hadn't been back. And so everybody had moved on, like we were creating new friendships. And it was, Michelle, it was the hardest time of my life by far. I was so unhappy, and I was so depleted by having, 2 kids really close together, not taking care of myself, really self-sacrificing. My husband was working in the basement. I've got these 2 kids home with me all the time. I'm in a new area, which is a huge stressor in itself, like, let alone having little kids when you move, right? And so the depression, anxiety was just like so intense. And it was a little bit before we moved when I had probably my first rageful episode, where I was like slamming the top of the washing machine, like really hard. And that was frightening to me. I was like, okay, I got to get a handle on this. Like, and my little one is, screaming, running away from me, terrified. And then I can't remember, there were several rageful episodes. Like, I can't even keep track of how many there were. I remember one time, slamming the door so many times that I actually broke the doorknob through a door. I remember slamming a toy into the wall and creating like this huge hole in the basement, and I remember I was receiving help, but it wasn't enough. And the rock bottom moment really was, it was after a trip we had gotten back, and I was just feeling so overwhelmed. I don't remember the specific trigger exactly, but what ended up happening was that I broke our dinner plates in the kitchen sink, just like slamming them, and in a fit of rage, and just almost out of my body, like totally disassociated and terrified of myself and what I was capable of. Like, I didn't recognize who I was anymore. I was so removed from who I am as a person.
Yes. So dysregulated.
So dysregulated. And in that moment, after that moment, I was like, okay, I've been saying like that I'm going to try a medication, or I've been saying that I'm going to sleep better, or whatever it was. Right. And it's like, okay, if I don't do this, like I seriously am going to lose my family. Like I am not going to have this intact family that is so, so important to me. Like it was so scary and overwhelming, and just, I felt so hopeless. So that was my rock bottom moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of want to dive into that a little bit. So what was the response that you received when you were doing those things, when you were in those moments of a fitful rage? What was the response that you had received from your kids and from your husband?
I think they were, as I was, scared, very confused, very confused, because as you know me now, Michelle, like I'm a joyful, smiley person who really loves my life. And so they saw glimmers of that, right? And so it was just very disconcerting for them to see me in that way. For my husband, I think he felt kind of helpless, like how, I don't even know what to do for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was very supportive and always has been, but I think he was also reaching a point where we can't keep living like this. And because then, you know, after the fit of rage, there's the shame spiral that you go into, right? Where you just like, you hate yourself so much. You're thinking about it over and over and over, and it lasts for days or weeks. And then like you come out of it for a little while and it's just so awful. So, yeah, they were scared. They were confused. They were sad. They were upset. I mean, I remember, you know, really intentionally repairing with them and apologizing for my behavior. And that was even in some ways more painful, right? Having to admit,
absolutely.
Like, that was what I said and what I did was not okay. And you do not deserve to be treated that way. And I am so sorry. And I love you. And yeah, it's just so hard.
It is hard to really admit, I don't want to call them faults, but areas that you can really like grow in, right? No one is born perfect, and we're all coming from such different backgrounds, different ways we were raised. Even our baseline varies. You know, like some people are really lucky in that their parents already had the emotional resilience and awareness and intelligence to raise kids that can speak about their feelings and are very open about it and know how to understand themselves, which creates better grounds and foundation for healthy relationships with everybody. And then there's people like you and I, where our parents didn't have that taught to them, right? And they're just doing their best. And I'm sure their best was better than their parents, right?
Yes.
And so how incredible is it that you were able to take these rock bottom moments and really shift into and evolve into who you are today? So what was the biggest takeaway from those dark moments where you're like, I cannot keep going. Like, I'm going to lose my family if I keep doing this.
Yeah. Lose my marriage, lose access to my daughters. I mean, it was one thing to admit to them, like this was wrong, but like to have to potentially share that with other people. Right. It was just so much embarrassment and shame. But so what came out of that, Michelle, for me was advocating for myself in a way that really honored what I needed. And I think because I did not witness that from my own mother, like she was very much a martyr. And like, I know a lot of this was connected with the times in which we were raised. Like I was raised in the late 70s, early 80s into the 90s. And so just knowing that if I really wanted to be the mother I desired to be, that I had to take much, much better care of myself. And that felt so unbelievably challenging and hard for me because I was so used to being the people pleaser, making sure everybody else had what they needed, giving and giving and giving, believing that that was actually going to come back and fill me up, where it actually did the opposite, right? Like we know. And so I talk about, you know, going from a place of total self-sacrifice to a place of putting myself first is really where I had to go. And I almost had to swing the pendulum the complete other way and like really overdo it, because otherwise I'm not sure I would have gotten to that place, right? Like I had to really take it seriously. And like, this is almost a matter of life and death. In some ways it was, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
it totally is, because if it's not familiar to you because you did not see it modeled for you, which I want to say most people in our generation haven't really witnessed, because we are coming from a place where, you know, their moms are either people who stayed at home, or we're working, but still fulfilling that role of being in charge of the kids and being in charge of the home. And the husbands are just like, well, I'm the breadwinner and that's my only job. Not to say that that's not hard work, but there was also other work to be done at home. And so for me, like my mom was like, she worked full time and took care of the kids and the house. Right. And my dad worked, but there was some inequalities there in the household. Yes. There was a power imbalance when it came to delegating out work and really working together as a team. Right. Yes. So being in this phase where it's like, we're the generation is like, no, we need to do things differently. We need to shake things up, because we're not trying to slowly improve from the last iteration. Yeah. We're actually trying to create something new to set ourselves up for better, and then having our kids benefit from it as a byproduct, right? So I love this phrase that I learned from Alison I. She's an incredible coach, and she says to love yourself most, which I know moms all over the place probably struggle with hearing that.
Yeah.
Love yourself most.
Yes, that's really
because
beautiful.
How good are you if you're like completely burned out and depleted and in that fit of rage? Like, you can keep loving your kids most, but if you're not loving yourself most, that's what's going to end up happening, right? It's not a sustainable way to live.
It's not. And I think that puts so much burden on our children, because they are not responsible for who we are in our parenting journey. That is our job. And if we don't have the tools, the resources, the practices to show up as the parent that we really want to be, respectful, kind, compassionate, present, those are all so important to me. And if I'm not taking care of me, if I don't matter most, then I absolutely cannot show up as that person, because like you said, Michelle, I'm depleted, I'm exhausted, I'm resentful, right? I'm pissed off, I'm angry, I'm living in my head.
Yeah. We have to take charge of advocating for ourselves, because if we do not do that, no one's going to do that. I mean, I think it's everybody's job to do that for themselves. So what steps did you take to start prioritizing yourself?
Yes. So I had been seeing a therapist and had shared with her about what I was really going through. And I was also doing other like holistic practices. And I think that was one of the frustrating things for me, is like I was getting much better sleep, which is a huge factor for mamas, I think.
Yes.
So I was getting better sleep. I was taking like herbs. I was doing massage and chiropractic care and all the things. And I still could not get a handle on this rage piece. And so finally, I just realized that, like, even though I was terrified of trying a medication because I was fearful that it would make me feel worse than better. And so I just kept putting it off and putting it off. I didn't want to have to be the person who needed the medication. I was stronger than that, right? Like I was so, again, embarrassed and ashamed that Alison, had to take a medication to feel better. But that's ultimately what I did, because I thought this is kind of like a last straw thing, right? A last ditch effort. If this doesn't work, well, we'll see. And so I think shortly after breaking the dinner plates in our kitchen sink, I made an appointment with a provider, just someone random, and went in with so much vulnerability and honesty about what I was going through. And she was so gentle and kind and understanding and like not judgmental or anything. Right. And just understanding that, yes, you're in a space right now where you may need a little bit more support, and that's okay. And this doesn't have to be a forever thing. And I know there's so much stigma around medication, and we all have to make our own choices around that. But truly, it was like 2 weeks after I started taking that medication that I felt so much better. And I was starting to feel, it was incredible. And I really just needed just like a little bit of support, a little bit more, right? Like whatever was going on in my brain just wasn't working out. And so that really, I think of that as like the start of my healing journey of like the deep healing. So then I could look at the trauma, and I could look at the childhood dysfunction, and I could look at all of those other things that I just didn't have the capacity to unearth when I was feeling so out of body and so not myself.
Yeah. And what's crazy is that hindsight's always 2020. So it's like, I spent so much time and effort resisting. And then it's just like, when you get to that point where you're like, oh, well, why didn't I do that sooner?
Exactly. I mean, I beat myself up in that like 4 years ago for quite a while. I'm like, I cannot believe I didn't do this sooner. Think of all the, things that I've said or done that maybe I wouldn't have done. It was just it was painful to think about, but then I was like, I got to let that go.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
Not helpful.
And totally not helpful. And for those listening, like, I have worked a lot on this, and I'm just going to put it out here, but like, fuck what everyone else says. Okay. Or thinks. And most times, if they really truly care about you, they're not thinking anything but like, okay, this is the next route for you. I hope it works out for you. Like, there are so many people who have things that they can help you with, things that they can support you with, whether it's the medication route, whether it's going to see a therapist, whether it's working with a coach or a mentor like me and Alison. Like, there are endless resources out there for you. You could pick up a book if you're not quite ready to talk to someone. There are like virtual classes that you can take that are pre-recorded, that, you don't have to interact with anyone if you're not ready to work through it in community with someone else. So like, seriously, fuck the other opinions of people and put yourself first. If you're not experiencing life how you desire to, then something's gonna give.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you are such a beautiful, powerful voice for that, Michelle. And hearing you say those words, it just like, it just stokes the flames of that, like really that passion and that, yes, like this is your life,
not theirs.
It's not theirs. And like, if they have opinions about it that don't support you, then like, maybe they don't need to be in your life, or maybe you need to set up a little boundary to protect yourself. But like, you have this one precious life, and yes, please, as Michelle said, like, seek out the resources, whatever they are. And to your point of like the social media, I mean, the resources out there now are so tremendous compared to even a year ago or 2 years ago, related to so many of these topics we're talking about. And you can find a way to feel supported and still keep your anonymity until you're in a place where you feel like you can say like, look, I'm really having a hard time and I need more support. And that's okay, because we all go through hard times. We all do.
Yeah. It's part of being human. Like, the struggle is part of being human. So don't isolate yourself thinking you're the only one, or like what people think of me. It's like, you know what? My favorite people are the ones who are the most vulnerable and real about their actual experience of life. Not people are like, I'm doing fantastic. I love my life. I don't hate any aspect of it. I'm like, seriously? I don't believe you.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's honestly hard to trust that, right? Like, okay, totally. I mean, where we are, I feel like in doing a lot of this inner work and kind of in a stage of motherhood that we're in, or whatever it is, not like we're better than anybody else, but I think at some point you just realize like, okay, you do you, I'm going to do me because I know how to do me best. And I think that that's really what I mean when I say put yourself first. It's like we are taught, and this is connected to this conversation, Michelle, around like what we learn from our mother, from our father, from females and males growing up, is like we have inherited this belief, and we've been conditioned to believe that like we serve others, right? As women, as girls, we serve others.
And we're nurturers.
We're nurturers, right? Like we're just, well, we are. I mean, we're naturally nurturing, but like we are other things too.
Many other things.
And I think that when we start to really peel back the layers of the onion and see how so much of our beliefs, our thoughts, how we feel, how we're the choices we're making don't actually belong to us, that they've just kind of been put on us.
Yes. Like storytelling.
Yeah, it's so freeing. It's like, oh my God, I actually, wait a minute, I'm an adult and I can make my own choices.
Yes. Yes.
It's amazing.
That I think that was like a really big one for me too. Like, oh, wait, that's just something I thought I had to do. That's something I thought I should do. But let's stop and think about, what do I want to do? What's the vision that I'm working towards? It's not the same as my parents. So of course my path is going to be different.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is so much of giving ourselves permission, right? So even just like going back to us being nurturers, nowhere in that does it say you can't nurture yourself.
Right.
But we don't think about it that way. We're like, oh yeah, we give to other people, right? We serve other people. It's just like, what?
Yeah.
Well, how can you keep serving other people if you're just like continuously, okay, it's like that rainbow fish book. You know that book?
Not
right?
so well.
Okay, so this rainbow fish has like, it's just like any other fish, except that it has like rainbow scales on parts of it. And people are like coming up to it, super jealous and wanting it to share a scale with it because it wants to be as beautiful, right? And eventually it does share. And like that part of the story is like really beautiful because he gained friends from it. But if he gave away his last one and he just continued to give away his scales, like you're no longer a fish. You cannot survive in the ocean anymore. Right.
Yes. Yes.
So like you have to, if you enjoy giving, beautiful, but remember what is necessary for you to keep giving. You need to replenish. You need to replenish, right? Whether that looks like resting or getting support or, doing the work. There's so many layers to it.
Yeah. And it's a consistent thing. And back then, especially in early motherhood, I was of the opinion where it was like, I'm going to go get my nails done, which is like kind of a classic, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to go get a yearly massage. And it's like, why don't I feel better?
Yes.
And I have this conversation quite a bit with the mamas that I support, is that this is like, this is a habit that you're creating, a healthy habit of every day, seriously checking in with yourself and saying, what do I need today? But it is, it's like totally repatterning your brain. And it doesn't have to be hard, right? It's just, it's like we forget, oh, that's right. I need to come back to myself. Do I need something to eat? Do I need to drink? Do I need to get out in nature? What do I need? But we're so, again, because of that conditioning, we're so used to looking outside of ourselves and thinking like, what does everybody else need? How is everybody else doing? Right. And so it's a process to come back to ourselves.
Totally. And what's cool about when you go through that process of starting to advocate for yourself, starting to check in with yourself and really giving yourself the support that you need or asking for the support that you need, you begin to show your family how they can interact with you in this new way. Right? Like I have started to push back because like, as soon as my kids are awake, they're like, I'm hungry. And they keep asking for things to the point where it's like, when do I get to sit down and make my breakfast? And so now I just make them wait. I'm like, no, you have to wait. Like, why don't you do things to help me out, to have us all eat at the same time faster?
Yeah.
Okay. This is not about like me. It's about, the good of the group.
Yes.
What's
Like,
good for
let's
the
come
group.
together.
Yes, exactly. And also you're teaching them that it's okay for them to take time for themselves, to be true to what they need. So let's not pass on what we learned and are currently unlearning, right? What if they get to skip that part? How
Yeah.
incredible would that be?
Yeah. And I think, for starters, I think it's important to say, Michelle, and I'm sure the listeners know this too, but like anger is a healthy emotion.
Oh yeah. And normal.
And normal. It's so normal. It's healthy. It's important. We need to experience it. We need to express it in ways that are productive and not hurtful, right? So that is really important to mention. Rage is kind of on a different level, at least from my own experience. But I had a lot of struggle with even expressing my anger because growing up, anger is like not an okay thing to exhibit, right? And if you're angry, you got to go spend some time in your room and be alone.
Figure it out yourself.
Right. I'm going to disconnect from you. And that is really painful. So I also think in taking care of ourselves, a huge part of that is showing our children what we do with all of those emotions, right? One is not bad, one is not good. I can be angry, I can support myself through it, and then we move on, right?
Yes.
So, and that, again, back to this conversation of what we learn in childhood, like that was never displayed for me. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, oh, I can be angry and it's an okay thing, and I can spend some time alone and come back and be part of the, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anger is actually very helpful to experience, because that's when you get to realize like, oh, I feel angry. Notice the sensations in your body, because that's how your body's communicating with you, is through emotions, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what's coming up for me right now? What doesn't feel right? What do I want to change? What do I need to give myself? Are there boundaries I need to set? Do I need to speak up? Do I need to remove myself? Like, do I need to go do some healing? Right? It's a signal. That's all it is. There's nothing to be ashamed about, right? And if you're not happy with how you're expressing it, then that's something that you can choose to grow into. And that's totally okay, right? Like I said, we all have different baselines of what we were shown in how people have dealt with emotions, right? Like, for example, I didn't learn any of that. Right. I learned unhealthy ways of expressing anger. And then I took that and I ran with it. I did my version of, oh, well, this way's better, but it didn't end up being better. Right. So no shame at all, just awareness, and just start to get curious. Right. So what do you think are the biggest obstacles for moms taking better care of themselves?
I think it's really tied to these beliefs that we inherit and the conditioning that of this, I'm a good girl. I receive love by pleasing others. I receive love by serving others, right?
Yes.
And so if I believe that the only way I receive love is by giving and giving and giving, then I'm not going to take good care of myself, because that's receiving. Right. And I give because I'm good. So I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle. I also think that, again, like thinking about what we saw, our parents taking on different roles. A recent person in my community shared, I'm really pink and my husband's really blue. And so these roles that we play, right? And I think sometimes we get stuck in the idea
too rigid.
Of a little bit rigid, right? And again, because this is what we've seen, right? This is mostly what we see in our culture still, is like, I play this role, you play that role. And I have to, ask you if I need help with the kids. And I don't want to be too needy, because that's not being a good girl. And I don't know how to ask for what I need, because I never really had to do that, because my needs aren't important, because I'm a good girl, right? Like it all kind of flows back into that. And so those are some
I'm
of the
seen but not
obstacles.
heard. That's a
Yes.
big one.
Yes.
As girls growing up, you're to be seen but not heard. Yeah. Yeah.
Most definitely. And so if you have needs, if you're needy, that's, don't want to be
Nobody,
needy.
right. Don't want to be needy because no one's going to want you.
Right. You are
You're going to
not
be too
lovable.
much. Yes, exactly. Exactly. I could not. Oh my gosh. I relate to that so much.
Yeah.
So what did you notice in yourself and in your clients when you and they started prioritizing themselves? And also, like, can we go into what it even means to prioritize yourself?
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of people like the idea of it, but they're not quite sure of what that means.
Yeah. Kind of teasing that out a little bit. Let's start there. Prioritizing yourself means that you are creating this habit of checking in with yourself and what you need. Prioritizing yourself means, you just shared a great example from the breakfast situation that you had, Michelle, where it's like,
oh my
okay,
gosh.
Look, I'm hungry. You're hungry. Let's do this together. And I'm going to prioritize that I need to eat too, right? It's not like I'm going to serve everybody else and then I'll eat last. That's the opposite of prioritizing yourself. Prioritizing yourself is setting healthy boundaries around your energy, right? Protecting what is important to you and getting your needs met. It's, having a space where you can go in your house where you maybe can get some quiet time. It's buying food that is going to feel nourishing and supportive to you. It's on every level, right? Just like matrescence touches every part of our lives, prioritizing our well-being is the same.
Yeah,
would you add
definitely.
anything there? Anything more you want to say?
I mean, at the foundation of it, it's really just understanding, who do I wish to be most times? Because we're still human. We're going to have varying capacity levels depending on what's happening in life, right? And where we are in our cycle, but menstrual cycle. But understanding, okay, well, this is what I want for myself. This is who I choose to work towards being. What do I need in order to become that person? Oh, I need X amount of hours of sleep. I need to have some carved out time to myself every day for however many minutes so that I can do these things that allow me to feel like me, whether it's creative, whether it's, reflecting, whether it's doing exercise, hanging out with friends, talking on the phone, like whatever it is, reading, being able to connect with who you are as a woman, right? Because like I like to say, motherhood is not the death of your womanhood. No. It's just another hat that you've added to your list of hats, right? And just making sure you're taking action towards creating what you need, your toolkit, into your daily life. And that's what's going to set you up. That's prioritizing yourself, right? It doesn't mean like abandoning your children and saying, mommy needs a whole day to herself. You figure it out. Like if they're teenagers, fine, you go do that. Like I plan on doing that. Right. But if you're still raising littles, like Alison and I are, right? Like, cause I have a 12 and a half, almost 6-year-old and a 2-year-old right now. It's going to look very different. So prioritizing could just be like, okay, hold on. I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. Mommy's going to go do this thing. When that timer goes off, then I can help you. Then I can play with you, right? Just setting those boundaries of like, hey, I see that you want to do this. Let's do that after I do this, right? Creating that space, creating that level of like, oh, okay, like what I do, what I want to do is also important. Not just like, oh, you need something. Okay, let me just pause everything that I'm doing and go run to save you, because that's what I equate to being a good mom.
Yeah. Yes.
Which could not be farther than the truth. Like what makes you a good mom is helping build your capacity to be present, to be compassionate, loving, kind, patient. Yes. And is self-abandoning the way you do that? No, it is not.
Yeah. And I think Michelle, the thing that so many of the mamas that I support take away from that, the prioritizing the well-being and that being new, right? Because it makes sense. I mean, motherhood is brand new and there's a lot going on in motherhood, but then add on top of that, like, oh, I'm going to take better care of myself and make myself a priority, is just how easy that is. How easy it can be, that it doesn't have to feel so life-changing. Or it feels life-changing, but it doesn't have to be like these monumental things and complicated, right? Like to your point of like, I'm not saying I'm going to go away for a week when I have little ones, or I'm not saying that I'm never making dinner again, right? These are just touch points throughout the day. And ultimately what we're talking about is saying, I matter.
Yes.
My needs matter. I am a human and I have needs and they matter. And you're just continuing to connect with yourself in that, because when you prioritize your well-being, you are physically showing through your actions that you matter. And that is so important, because we can give that to ourselves. We cannot expect that from our spouse or our children. We are responsible for filling up our cup, right?
Yes. And it gets easier.
It does.
It gets easier because at first, I will admit that it can be a struggle, because it's us doing something different. And when we do things that are different, our minds challenge that.
Oh, yeah.
It comes up with excuses or judgments as to why you don't deserve to do that, because our minds don't like change. It wants to literally use the least amount of energy that it can. And how do you do that? Living on autopilot. But us being the more evolved version of us and constantly wanting to seek continuous improvement, we have to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations where we're trying things new. We're putting on that, beginner's mindset of like, okay, well, I don't really know how to do this, but I'm willing to just do this one thing different, right? And you mentioned like, I'm not going to leave my kids for a week. If you want to do that, like, go for it, but also create a daily or more regular, consistent routine for you. And when I say routine, I don't mean like it has to be at 6 a.m. every day. It could be like, sometime today, I'm going to take 5 minutes to myself to meditate, do breath work, to journal, to read, to take a little power nap, like whatever it is that you feel like you need to help yourself reset, come back to yourself and not be overwhelmed by all the noise, all the touching and all the whining and like all the things that come with being a caretaker.
Yes, such great points. And I just wanted to mention that a huge part of my journey right after I had, not right after, but around the time when I had broken my plates in the dinner sink, is just realizing that I needed more space. I needed time for me. And I was like so deep in the hole. I needed significant time for me. And I knew of some mamas who were stay-at-home mamas, but still put their kids in childcare for some of the time. And that was like a revolutionary thought for me. Like, again, this is like what you don't do, right? Like good moms stay home with their kids and they don't, whatever. Those were my beliefs. And so I enrolled them in Montessori preschool, and that created much more space for me. And again, so that I could reconnect with myself and be the mama I wanted to be.
Totally. Yeah. I remember feeling immense guilt for really coming to terms with like, oh, I'm not actually designed for this. I don't actually want to be a stay-at-home mom. All I wanted was to not put my child in childcare when he was nonverbal. Well, he's verbal now, and I don't have the capacity to be your full-time playmate, right? Like I had to be really honest with myself, and I felt like, why am I even a mom? Why did I choose to have children then? What does this mean about me? Right. And so I had to really come to terms with like, no, it doesn't mean jack shit about me. Even if someone close to me questioned why I wanted to have kids, if I wanted to go work. Right. And I was like, no, that's their opinion. And I can still be a fantastic mom while going after my dreams. And so I found a really amazing, loving childcare provider that he still goes to right now. And I literally could not feel happier and closer to him.
Yeah. Isn't that incredible? And that takes so much courage, Michelle. Like, seriously, courage, bravery, honesty. Like you mentioned that too. I loved what you said about our brains. They're trying to keep us safe, protect us, stay the same, right? That's safe, that's normal, that's consistent. So it does take courage to step out of that. And it can feel like a big leap, or it can feel like a baby step, but whatever feels best for you.
Yes, you do you. Like, that's literally your theme of life. If it feels good to you and it's getting you closer to the life that you want, just go do it. Don't look for other people to validate it. Don't look to other people to give you permission, right?
Yeah.
Just go do it. It's your life. And if you're not going to be the one to advocate for it, you're just not going to have it. And you're going to have so much regret and resentment later on in life. And those are pretty horrible feelings to experience.
That's a lot.
And it's preventable, right? It's
Yeah.
preventable.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I could talk to you forever.
I know.
So we'll probably have to have you back for a future episode. But Alison, I hear you have an upcoming program that you created to support mamas in learning how to prioritize themselves.
Yes.
So can you share more about it?
Yes. Thank you so much for inviting me to share about this. I'm so excited about it's called Reconnected. And the name of the program speaks for itself, really, but it's an 8-week experience that starts in July 6th. And we meet for once a week for 8 weeks. It's very simple, but what we'll be learning about, talking about, reflecting on are topics that are so profound in their ability to support you in creating the life that you want. Creating that life that feels really good, like you've been talking about, Michelle, like what matters to me, what's most important to me, and to quiet the noise and to get clear, to reconnect, to understand about matrescence and its role in our lives and how we're different now. And that's an actually awesome thing. Like, we can be different and we can recreate ourselves by reconnecting with who we are now. And so I primarily draw mamas into my circle who are feeling not only rageful and angry, but also just really like burned out and disconnected, right? Like, we talked a little bit about this, but feeling like, okay, this motherhood thing is not at all what I thought it was going to be. And I am not loving it. And in fact, I'm really not I'm hating it almost, right? Like, that's how I felt. I hate this. I don't want to do this. So that is Reconnected, a simple 8-week practice. And I think it'll be really supportive for mamas of all ages and stages. Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, a lot of times as a listener of a podcast myself, you kind of just listen to the episode and you're like, so motivated, I'm going to do this. And then life happens. Someone asks you for something, you got to go do laundry or whatever it is that you need to do. And then you move on.
Right.
And so programs like what Alison's created is the perfect way for you to really put your energy, time, and even money where it matters most, which is investing in you. I truly believe that we are our best asset in investment.
Yes.
So if you are not loving your experience of being a mom right now, this is your opportunity, an invitation to make space to truly dive into the inner work that you have probably been avoiding, but know has been necessary, and to be supported by someone as loving and caring as Alison. She's truly so supportive and such a light in this world. She's been where you are now or somewhere pretty damn close to it. And so know that it is very, very much an open conversation with absolutely no judgment and all support. Okay. So if you're feeling called to even take a peek at it, I'm going to have the link in the show notes. Just go check it out. There's no harm in clicking on the link to look at what it's about. And you can always reach out to Alison. to ask her about whether it's right for you. But Alison, with that said, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle, for your beautiful words and support. Yes, I am on Instagram at I am Alison Ryan with one L. And then Facebook is the same, Alison Jane Ryan. And then I also have a website, AlisonJaneRyan.com.
Awesome. And we'll put all the links in the show notes in case you guys don't type that all out.
Right.
All right. So let's do something I love to do with all my guests. Okay.
Great.
So just for fun, I love to ask guests questions so that our listeners can get to know you better and just make you a little bit more human, right? Like we all like to know a little bit more about people. I don't know about you, but I can be pretty nosy. But are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Awesome. What's a food you can eat every day and never get sick of?
The first food that came to my mind was pad thai, but anything really like
with hot
Southeast
sauce.
Asian. Yeah. Yeah. Southeast
So
Asian
good.
food. I love it.
Yes. Southeast Asian food is the best. So much flavor, so much balance. Like I'm a foodie and yeah, I could eat Thai food every single day.
Yes.
Where's your favorite place to vacation?
To vacation. Wow. I love to go to the lake. I love to be on the lake, surrounded in nature.
Yeah.
It's just so peaceful and calming.
It is.
I grew up doing that and it just brings back a lot of really lovely memories. So that's my favorite. And I don't have to get on a plane, which I don't mind.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I love boating. I really miss boating.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
What's your favorite trashy TV show?
I was into Bridgerton has been really good. I don't have a TV show that I watch regularly. I just mostly get into the, shows on Netflix. What do I want to say? Like series and stuff. That I really like Bridgerton. Yeah.
Okay. I actually have not gotten into that. I don't know if that's really my style, but I know a lot of people love it.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to do for self-care? Ooh, this is a really relevant question right here.
I know. Do I have to pick one thing? It really depends. We can walk right into the woods here from where we live in our house. And so I spend quite a bit of time there. And I talk a lot on podcast episodes and with my community about spending time in nature and how really important that is for grounding and for nervous system regulation. And I really rediscovered myself in the woods, like listening to podcasts, walking there almost daily. So it's a really special place.
I love that. I love that so much. What's something you said you'd never do when you become a mom that you now do?
This is such a great question. It probably has something to do with food or my girls watching TV.
Oh yeah. The two big ones.
Yep. Because I honestly spent years not letting my girls watch TV. And that was in the years when like life was really hard and I really should have been giving them the TV more often. But yeah, TV and food, like mac and cheese and TV shows.
Totally.
Yeah. And I'm totally cool with it. It's like, doesn't bother me now. Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to put your own well-being first because you are struggling.
Yeah.
Right. There's going to be times where you feed them nurturing foods and do enriching activities, but like when you're struggling and it's a busy day and you don't have any support and your husband's busy too, like call in reinforcements, make things simple for you. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hit the easy button is what I
hit the easy button. That's right. That's right. What's something you're really looking forward to right now?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm really looking forward to Reconnected in July, and I'm really looking forward to a trip to Florida in August with my family and hope that we don't melt as Minnesotans. But we're just going to go for a summer vacation together. I'm excited about that.
I love that. And last question, what's your favorite song to jam out to?
Oh man, Michelle. Gosh, what is one of my favorite ones? Probably Celebration is by Kool and the Gang. That one always I get up and start clapping.
That's a really feel-good song.
It is. Yeah. Anything that you can dance to, I'm all about it.
I love it. I love it. Well, it has been such a pleasure getting to talk to you about all this, normalizing mom rage, but also providing tips on how to help yourself through it. Because yes, it's normal and it's so relatable, but let's not stay there, right? Let's not stay there. Let's shift your rage into anger. Let's step it down a notch and learn healthy ways to support yourself so that you don't get to that point anymore, right?
Yes.
So if you love this episode, please connect with Alison. She is here for you. You are not alone. There's so much support out there for you. And thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I just had so much fun talking with you. And like you said, I could keep talking for hours. So thank you for the space to share and to connect.
Bye.
If you like this podcast, then you'll want to join my private Facebook community, Marriage and Motherhood. The fights and the disconnect you're currently experiencing doesn't have to be how things go for the rest of your life. If you're ready to give your marriage a makeover, come join the Marriage and Motherhood community to learn how to create a healthy, happy, and connected marriage that you actually enjoy and your kids can look up to. Thank you so much for listening to the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. I hope that this episode helped you deepen your relationship with your husband and, more importantly, with yourself. I hope to see you inside the Marriage and Motherhood community, and I look forward to supporting you in there. Otherwise, see you back here next week. Bye.